45 minutes. But it's a topic I could talk about for days and weeks. So I have to be very focused.
And just to let our
Yeah,
viewers know,
what's
this is
the
a live call-in show. So if there is anybody who wants to speak to Arne or has any questions, comments, or feedback to share, please call in our studio number. You can also leave your feedback or your comments on our Facebook and YouTube channel. So Arne, the floor is yours.
yeah? Well, the first question is usually what makes the difference between classical profiling systems and the identity compass.
Hmm.
The real uh, difference is that the identity compass is much more precise. How
Right.
does it do that? Well, if you look on your smartphone, how many
Hmm.
pixels does your smartphone have? I guess a couple of millions pixel. So classical profiling systems just have 4 or 8 or 16 types. So that's
Hmm.
like using a smartphone with just 16 pixels. Nobody would like to use that. And the
Yes.
identity compass does deliver a really crisp, sharp picture of every single person. I really duly believe that every person on this planet is different, and every person on this planet um,
It's
deserves
unique.
its very own unique profile.
Definitely.
And and I have calculated the numbers of possible profiles in the identity compass, and it's just incredible. If you believe in reincarnation, uh, it would be possible to reincarnate 4.5 billion times before you have to take a used profile,
Right.
which is just an incredible number.
Hmm.
And
So,
I, yeah,
so
yeah,
this
classical
identity
profiling
compass,
system. Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to get a better understanding of how this is unique in the way that how does it differ from other systems that are available right now and people have been using for ages. What makes this so
Yeah,
unique?
well, the classical profiling system just put people into 4 or 8 or 16 boxes. They
Right.
call it types, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they even use only 3 types. And then
Right.
I go and say, well, why 4 types? Why 3 types? Just let's it make more simple. Let's make it two
Mm.
types, female and male. And
Yeah.
that makes it much more easy, and we can see from the outside already uh, who is female and who is a male, usually at least. And actually, it really rarely changes throughout life. So it's
Right.
very long predictable. And
Mm-hmm.
uh, and we all know women cannot park a car and men cannot listen. That's why female and male relationships are so easy, right?
Yeah. That's what we hear.
Yeah. The point is they assign to each and every type a number of generic attributes, which are
Mm-hmm.
sometimes true and sometimes not.
Yeah.
So, as it comes for women cannot park a car, I know many women which can park a car perfectly well,
Mm-hmm.
and even
Yeah.
my wife can park a car better than myself. So,
There you
um, so it's always the question, especially if it comes to mixed types,
go. Mm-hmm.
is this true for this person or not? And Einstein once said, make things as simple as possible, but don't make them simpler.
Mm.
And I can add to that, um, if you do not address the complexity of one thing, it gets complicated. And
Right.
humans are very complex beings. So that's
Mm-hmm.
why you have to address the whole complexity of the person And this is what we can do with the identity compass. The identity
Right.
compass tells why people do what they do. They
Mhm.
how they construct their thinking. So, and
Right.
it's yeah, that makes it really, really unique because nobody else in this world is doing this.
Yeah,
And
most of
I'm
the
developing
personality
this now
tests
for 20. Hmm?
most of the personality tests I have personally had in the past, like you said, they have very limited categories and they put you in boxes. It's either type A or type B. But this seems like so in depth because I think it focuses more on your thought process and your strengths, your abilities, your weaknesses, which is far more deeper, insightful than any of those available.
Yes, we can see by the results whether somebody um, has a strategy for burnout, which is
Wow.
today a real issue. Uh,
Mm,
you know, burnout is something which is not just happening. If you put
yeah.
100 people into a burnout situation, some of them will go into burnout and others will not. So
Yeah.
it has to do with our thinking. And by the help of the identity compass, we really found there is a mental strategy for burnout, which you have to
Mm,
follow, otherwise, you won't get into burnout.
right.
And and of course, then you have to be in the context of burnout. So you have to have experienced a lot of negative stress. And the neat thing
Mm,
on the identity compass, it just doesn't measure only your cognitive intention, so how you construct your thinking, but also um, the working climate. So the working climate you are in, and if you put things together, then it's amazing what you can read from this. So we can predict whether somebody is on to go into burnout or not.
mm-hmm.
And actually, which is a good thing because once you see this, you know what to do to get around burnout, or if you are already in, how to get out of burnout quickly.
So it doesn't only highlight the problem areas or indicate the areas that may be problematic in future, but it also offers solutions. So it's like the best
Yes,
option or best step forward. That's
yes,
brilliant.
and and what I'm really proud of is as we do not put people into boxes, we don't
Hmm.
uh, yeah, we don't push those people in these boxes. We just show you're using this thinking method such and such much, and we at the same time we show what other options are available. And if you want, you can choose to experiment also with the other options, so you develop your own personality. Yeah,
And you
that's
mentioned that
what is
this has been translated into several languages, so most people around the world can benefit from it. Most organizations or corporate sectors and
yeah. Currently, we have 19 languages. So you
okay.
could answer it, for instance, now in English and look at the results in Russian or Japanese or Indonesian if you want to, and vice versa,
That is
of
fast.
course. And
Wow.
yeah, um, there have been three doctoral theses made on the identity compass. The
Mhm.
latest was done by Dr. Darren Stevens in the UK, actually.
Okay.
He studied, he did his thesis, or he got his doctoral grade in April 2020.
Mhm.
Uh, uh, and he he made something which is he made even the identity compass better. First of all, he had to prove to the university that this is a rock solid scientific tool, because
Mhm.
otherwise they wouldn't have accepted it because they didn't know the identity compass. Uh, and even though we had two other doctoral theses already beforehand, but that wasn't enough to them. So he proved once again, that the identity compass is scientifically rock solid. And
Wow.
then he developed something. He said, well, the way you construct your thinking and how aware you are of your thinking, he calls this the awareness quotient.
Mhm.
And this way you can see whether somebody is a good coach for a certain person or not, because you have to be on a higher level than the other one. Um, Otherwise, you could damage them
That
because
is correct.
you don't see their thinking. If somebody is on a, he calls it awareness quotient, in short term abbreviated AQ. So if somebody's on AQ 5, he would not be able to coach an AQ 8 person.
Wow.
Uh, but the AQ 8 person can coach an AQ 5 or an AQ 6 or AQ 7 person.
Hmm.
So,
So
um,
this is
and
extremely beneficial, not just for clients, but also for coaches, for therapists, for professionals, for
yes,
mentors, to
exactly.
understand themselves that what is the best kind of area for us to specialize in or practice in.
Yeah. And the Dr. Darren Stevens and I, we were now also on the way to develop a new coaching method,
Okay.
which is important because I have been coached by some coaches, and I didn't feel good with it
Mm.
at that time or later on. But I I didn't know why. Today I know why. Because
Mm.
they were not on the level where I was.
Right.
So, but it's not their fault.
Mm.
It's there's and it's a higher level is not a better level. It's just a different level. But you have to be at that level to coach other people because you
Of
don't
course.
see, otherwise you don't see their thinking. If I
Mm.
cannot recognize your patterns in thinking, I
Yes,
will not be able to coach you.
definitely.
Yeah.
So
And
you practice
yes,
as a coach, you are also a trainer, and you're also a hypnotherapist. So do you combine all these together and offer the best kind of solution for your clients? And how does it work?
yeah. Well, actually, I'm even a instructor for hypnotherapy,
Mm.
and all my knowledge about hypnosis is also within the questionnaire of the Identity Compass
Okay.
because it puts you into an answering trance. That's why it's so extremely precise. It
Mm.
is scientifically proven the number two um, measurement, on unconscious measurement. The number
Right.
one is just showing just some graphics, and you really don't know what you are responding to. And but the identity compass is comes very close to that. And that's also scientifically proven, even though
Mhm.
we have questions, with words, you know.
Yeah.
And um, so that's one thing. The other thing is I'm I'm licensing this tool to
Hmm.
other trainers, consultants, and coaches, and that's how it was translated also into other languages because um, my Japanese is very limited.
You founded this tool, this identity compass, in
Yes,
1994. But how long did it take you to establish it, to create this?
it took. I had support by another trainer from Munich. His name is Bert Fäusel, and it took us 4.5 years to finish the first version of the identity compass.
Hmm.
And then everybody was asking for scientific proof, and
Yeah.
you know, I'm not that guy who says, well, you really need a scientific proof. I'm more the guy who says, well, if if I test it on myself and I feel
Yes.
it's good, then it's good. And because if the science said this is good, but I don't feel good with it, then what is good it for?
Yeah.
So, and
It's
finally, I
practical.
had the, yeah,
It's very
and
practical.
finally, yes. Finally, I had, I was really fed up by all these questions. And then I said, well, who is the number one authority in German speaking countries who would say, who, if he would say this is good,
Hmm.
then everybody would just shut up. And so I came across Professor Ansrid Weinert at the University of the German Army in Hamburg.
Okay.
And I simply called him. And he said, of course, I didn't get through, but I got to his assistant, Dr. Scheffer, and he got interested in the identity compass. And he looked at it, and well, he said, well, why don't you come along and I'll have a look at it. And then he looked at the questions and said, interesting, good questions, good questions. I've never seen something like this before. Well, that seems to be rock solid. And I was standing then beside him, and I got very proud and said, well, we have been working on this for 4.5 years. And he
Yeah.
said, I can see that. And I said, oh gosh, how can you do that? And he said, well, sometimes people come along and have worked something for like 6 months or on a
Yeah.
questionnaire and think they found the philosopher's stone, but it's just rubbish. But no, this has quality, and I'm ready to look at it. And then he said, well, may I look at the results? And then he looked at motives, uh, influence, affiliation, and achievement. And I said, well, you're not talking about David McClelland, do you? Well, well, David McClelland is or was a researcher at the MIT in Boston, and he found that there are three basic motives, which are, he called them power, affiliation, and achievement. And
Hmm.
because power sometimes has a bad connotation, I renamed it to influence. And I said, yes, I'm talking about this. And he said, no, 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 Mr. Maus, this is impossible because um, these motives can be only um, measured by so-called projective test, which means you
Right.
see some fuzzy pictures and you interpret what you see in there. And if you
Hmm.
have a good education and at least 2 years of experience, you can judge somewhat on the motives of the client.
Yeah.
And I said, well, at least we're measuring something. How about having a look at it? What were you measuring? And he said, good idea. And 3 months later, he came to me and said, well, congratulations, Mr. Maus, you have done it. So I've done something which is scientifically impossible.
Mm.
So I excused with science, and my excuse was I didn't know.
So, Arne, you spoke about how in depth and intense this identity compass is. How long does it take for an individual to fill out this questionnaire or this form? And
Uh, a, just a little bit less than an hour. It's between 45 and 55 minutes usually, but
right.
it's depending on your thinking as well. Some people take even 1.5 hours.
Oh, okay.
But the world record in doing it quickly was by a professional cyclist from the UK, and he answered the entire interview within 19 minutes.
Wow. I would be interested in knowing the results, but yeah.
Yeah, it is, and you can see by the results that he really answered correctly, and he
Hmm.
admitted, yeah, everything is correct. Yes,
As in the
even though
results
there were
about.
some surprises.
Mhm. How useful is this tool in personal life, not just in the professional setting or coach client relationship, but even in your personal life if you want to make improvements? within yourself, improve your thought process, and try to resolve the issues that you have within yourself. How beneficial is this?
Well, first of all, we had developed a version just for the professional context because our thinking is always context oriented. And you may think and behave in the professional context the same as in your private life, but there is no guarantee for that. And that's why we developed also one for private relationships. So for love relationships, because there
Okay.
I thought it might be the most useful one. And we have another version for people, for academic students.
Okay.
And we have one version for sportsmen.
Okay. Wow. So this is useful across different sectors and
Yes.
professions.
Yeah.
You know
By the
how
way, when
psychologists, sorry, you know how psychologists, they have this psychometric testing that they use in order to establish whether the client has a specific kind of disorder or a specific kind of thinking pattern or behavioral problem. Does this tool also help in understanding if there are any pathological issues underlying?
yes, we found that we can read it from it, even though at the I just developed it because I wasn't aware of. I was no, I was asked to teach about cognitive intentions,
Hmm.
and I thought I haven't understood them. So how can I teach something which I haven't understood? And then I started to talk to many trainers and all my questions I had, and they all said, "Well, oh, these are not the wrong. These are wrong questions. Don't ask them. They will lead you on the wrong path." And finally, I asked Robert Dills from the US, and he said, "Interesting questions, Arne. I don't have an answer, but I think there should be some." And then I said, "Well, how about finding out?" And he said, "Yeah, good. How would you like to do that?" And I said, "Well, yeah, develop kind of questionnaire, and then we can go run through statistically through the answers, and we might get some of these." Uh, and yeah, that's how we found, for instance, the thing with the burnout. We found the opposite also for true that we can measure this, which is bore out. You might not have heard the term bore out, but it's a problem which is quite as often as burnout. And
Tell us
it
more about this.
bore out is the opposite of burnout, the root
Okay.
case, but it's both extreme stress. It's just if you are in an absolutely boring job
Mm.
and you are completely under challenged, you go to work with with absolute resistance because you hate your job because it's so under challenging. This is bore out.
I
And
love that term, under challenged. How many of us actually come to this realization that the work that we are doing or the job that we are in could be under challenging?
yeah, it's sometimes true. Yeah. By the way, if it's over challenging, negative stress is quite often related to a time frame issue. If I would ask you now to count from 1 to 100, you would go,
Mhm.
"Oh, Arne, this is easy." But
Yeah,
if I would ask you to do this within 2 seconds, you would go, "Oof, how should I?"
yeah, yeah,
Because it's the time frame. And
yeah.
they but we found also other things like um, we can see whether somebody had burnout. We can see whether somebody is running a self-sabotage strategy, an obvious one or a hidden one. We can see uh, and whether somebody has a mental issue. We can see whether somebody had a traumatic experience in the past which needs to
Wow.
be resolved. We can see, uh, lately we could even identify people who are criminals, which was really astonishing to me because I never ever expected that, but it's true. And so over the years, more and more things uh, we could identify. Yes, because it's all patterns. It's how you construct your thinking, and
Mhm.
this is what we really identify very, very precisely.
It sounds like it can be a pretty useful tool for even employers to maybe use if they want to recruit someone and they want to know if this is the right candidate.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We have had companies which were doing normal assessment centers, and that was 15 years ago where we did the first test. They were running a 2 days assessment center with 10 candidates, and the assessment center cost the company €1,500 per day per candidate. So that was 30,000
Wow.
euros just for those 2 days. And I said, well, are you crazy to spend such amount of money? Why don't you
Mm.
use the identity compass?
Yeah.
And then um, they checked all, all these people with the identity compass too. And one
Mm.
of the candidates, um, yeah, profiled in the assessment center as a team player. And the
Right.
identity compass said, no, this is an individualist. And then they said, well, what are we going to do now? And then
Mm.
they said, well, we want this candidate anyhow. And we have them just as a, training on the job. And if he is really an individualist, he will just get to another section instead of the one we're looking at, we have now forecasted for him. And
Yeah.
after 1 year, they found the identity compass was right
Wow. It
and
took
the
them 1 year
assessment
to
was
find that
wrong.
out.
And then the HR department said, okay, then we can stop assessment centers. But all the
Mhm.
line managers said, oh no, you don't take away the power from us. Um, but they finally agreed to cut it down to 1 day, so which still saves them 15,000 euros per assessment.
So it's cost effective as well. What about law enforcement agencies? Is it something even they can benefit from?
I didn't understand that.
Like law enforcement agencies like the police, the military, the army,
Oh, yeah.
these kind of
Actually,
organizations.
yeah, we are now using it at the police in Lancashire,
Wow.
and we're doing
That's
some scientific research on that. Yeah, and that's uh, also guided by Dr. Darren Stevens, and the one who is doing the scientific research, he's doing his degree on that research, is using the identity compass, and he's mentored also by Dr. Darren Stevens. And yeah, that all of them. Some other things which are also interesting. We could even see somebody who is on to bully other people. We can identify that, and we could even identify the reason why he did that because of a
really.
traumatic experience in the past. Unfortunately, we did not have uh, a mandate for coaching that person because I'm, I think we could have helped that person very much. Yes,
I find it
and
really hard to believe that it only took you 4.5 years to establish something as brilliant as this. I mean, usually people would spend God knows half their lives in researching and coming up with something a
yeah.
bit
Well,
different.
actually, after the when Dr. Sheffer he checked also the identity compass in the questionnaire. He went through statistically, and he pinpointed a lot of. He said it's good, but it's not good enough scientifically, and he made 6 suggestions he gave to me, and I followed all of them. And we spent another half a year on developing and refining, or tweaking the questions. And then he retested, and he was really blown away by the results. Um, well, it's just I don't think that I'm particularly clever, you know. I'm just that idiot who didn't do anything else in the past 26 years than, spending all his time to research on that, on these patterns. And that's why, yeah. And of course, we are always improving. So if you see the identity compass from 22 years ago than today, um, there's a huge difference. Yeah, but the basic structure is still the same.
You are known worldwide as a leading expert in cognitive intentions. Tell us about
Yes.
that. Because
Well,
I think most people don't know what cognitive intentions really refers to.
well, it's for instance, it starts with your perception, and as humans, we use three senses the most, which is seeing, hearing, and feeling. Uh, Smelling and tasting is are not our primary senses. Dogs can smell much better than, way better
Yes.
than humans can do. So, but it has a big impact. So people which are high on seeing, they're very visual, and one word, no, one picture says more than 1,000 words. So if you
Yeah.
stand in front of a visual person, they will talk very fast, and they will just breathe here in their upper chest, because um, they all want to tell what they can see internally, and this is on
Mm.
an unconscious base. So that's why they
Yes.
talk so fast. And while hearing people, they love melodies, and
So,
um, they also make pauses on purpose, and they have melodic speaking, and they're looking for harmony in life. Actually, that's something which turned out way later. It took me years to understand that.
mm.
And while feeling feelings don't change that often. So that's why feeling people talk very slowly. And Dr. Sheffer today, he's professor, he found that people which are high on feeling, they are have a tendency to dominance.
Wow.
We never wanted to measure that, but we found out we do. And the other thing is classical profiling systems, for instance, measure dominance. So, but what does that mean? The identity compass does not measure only dominance, but also the way a person is dominant. So, if, let's say, the Dalai Lama would enter a big room, all
Hmm.
people would turn around and he would dominate the room without doing anything, just by
Yeah.
being there. And if somebody would enter the room with a machine gun and shoot,
Yeah.
he would dominate the room as well, but in a completely different manner.
Different.
And
Yeah.
I'd love to know beforehand which way somebody is dominant.
In a negative or a positive way. Yeah.
Yeah, and we can tell.
But that kind of tells you or gives you a clue whether somebody has good leadership qualities or whether somebody is
Yes,
merely a dictator.
yes, absolutely. We can see also whether somebody is a fast thinker, a quick decision taker, or whether somebody is a good leader or not so good leader, whether somebody is a good communicator or not so good communicator. many different things. We can simply read from the results. That's amazing, really amazing. I'm quite often amazed myself. I say, "Oh wow, who has developed this? Oh, it was me. Oh really?"
I personally cannot wait to feel it myself and see the results, because life is a journey and you're constantly learning about yourself, learning about the environment you
Yeah,
live in, and getting to know other people around you. It's a process that's ongoing. So,
yeah.
and I think the more understanding that you develop about your own self, your thought process, and your behaviors, then I think you're in a much like stronger position to make amendments or improvements, because your behaviors are a result of your thoughts. So if you could understand them, I think that could be a really powerful way of achieving things in life.
Actually, the first time the identity compass was ever used was in a German subsidiary of a Swiss company located in Frankfurt, Germany. And
Mhm.
I introduced myself there as a trainer. And they, um, I got to the CEO, and the CEO told me, "Well, Mr. Maus, we have there in one department we have a real issue. There is big trouble. I would even call it a war between service and sales in that one department, and they do a turnover of 50 million euros. And customers are even complaining not anymore with the head of the department, but with me directly. And I'm fed up with that. I'll give you two
Mhm.
days to manage. Can you do?"
Yeah.
And I took a deep breath and I said yes. And then, and that was just because I had already a working version of the identity compass. So I sent the interview to each one of them, and all the salesmen said, "Oh, interesting. We learned something about ourselves," and they all filled in. Then the service people, they showed up with the trade union. Psychological profile, not with us. And then I talked to them for about 10 minutes and I said, "Well, I just want the results um, because it would help me to help you to overcome those problems. And I even don't need to know um, who filled it in. I just need the results, and I can assure you, if you give them back to me anonymously, there will be also no way that they will be filed with with your files inside the company, with your personal files, and which is not intended at all. But you could make it sure that way even. And then they all filled it in,
Mm.
and then I took all the results and projected them onto the wall, as a team profile, where you could
Right.
see the single persons. And then I started, with seeing, hearing, feeling, and explained how the different persons, which are far away from each other, how they would, act, how they would speak, how they would think about the other person, and vice versa.
Mm.
And then at the fourth or fifth dimension, they all started to giggle. And I asked them, what are you giggling? And they said, "Oh, it's just like with us." I said, "Well, yeah, it has to be. It's your profiles." And then they started to understand that the others are not idiots, but just people thinking in a different way. And
Exactly.
then we did some exercises where the opposite way of thinking was an advantage. And then they
Mhm.
understood, oh, interesting. That guy is complementary to my own thinking, and we can take advantage of that. That's
Mm.
interesting. And the war was over immediately. And by the results, I could also see that the service was part of a problem because they came up with solutions too quickly without knowing uh, the issue. correctly. So it
Right.
happened, for instance, that a company or a customer got a new device and he switched it on and found, oh, it doesn't work the way I want it. So he called up the service, and the
Mhm.
serviceman said, well, which device is it? Ah, okay, yeah. And what is the fault? Ah, okay, we know that. Just send it in, please. So he sent it in, and 7 days later, he got his device back. So you could see they were extremely well organized, because if you
Right.
send in something today, the chance to get it back within 7 days is uh, yeah to
Kind
zero,
of challenge.
I think. So so he was happy to get it back, and he switched it on again. Same fault. So he called up again, but this time he wasn't, that nice anymore. And he said, "Well, what have you done with the device? It turned out the same error, same mistake. So haven't you checked it?" And the serviceman, of course we have checked it, uh, and I have here the report. So what's up? And finally, the service and they got into a quarrel over the phone. And finally, the serviceman asked, "Well, uh, can you go into the settings and check whether this is switched? That one item is switched on or off?"
Hmm.
And he guided him through the menus, and then, yeah, is it switched off or on? It's off. Okay, switch it on. Okay, and now, yeah, now it's working. Okay, was the customer happy now? No, because he thought that bloke from the service, he could have told me already 7 days ago. Then I
Hmm.
could have used all the time uh, the device already. And the serviceman simply thought, well, what a bloke. He can't read the fucking manual, you know. So,
We've got 1 minute left, Arne. So, if you would like to give any final message for those who are watching right now.
yeah, well, just let me finish that. Uh, and then I developed a new strategy together with them to come from global to detail. And after that, they didn't have claims from customer side for 4.5 years. And after 4.5 years, I simply lost contact because this department was sold to another company. So yeah, so I'm
So, this is something that's constantly being improved and revised to cater the
yes,
needs of the
absolutely.
people in the best way forward.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh,
And we are planning also a new. We are planning now for a new website. My book will be the next version of my book will be published this month, and the title is "Getting People Right."
getting people right. And is this available easily on Amazon or anywhere else?
Yes, yes,
And it's also in English language, right? Not just German.
yeah. Getting People Right is English. The German title
Very.
would be "Das Denkverkehrbuch," and I don't recall the Spanish title.
Hmm. That's absolutely fine. English should do. Thank you so much, Anne, for taking the time out today. It was a really, I thoroughly enjoyed the discussion and learning about the identity compass. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right, viewers, we'll see you again. Join us next Saturday as we talk to you about another topic and with another guest. Till then, look after your mental health. Assalamu alaikum.